you'd like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or get involved in the conversation on social media. Join the Pearl Jam Podcast community group on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at liveonfourlegspod.
And I don't know if some of you know. I know a few people know, but some of you probably don't. And we didn't know. We didn't know just about until yesterday that today, October 22nd, 20. Did you know? 24 years ago today, it was our first gig in Seattle. So we're proud of that. We're proud to still be together, and we're proud to be in a long relationship. We had to divorce a couple drummers to find the right one to settle down with. And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Gentlemen! Mama Queen! Matt fucking Cameron in the drum. Mr. Boom Gasper. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hey everybody, now welcome to Live on Four Legs, definitive live Pearl Jam podcast. Happy birthday to Pearl Jam. That's right. So as Ed has been wearing the whole entire tour year, the number 34 Walter Payton jersey, it was done for a reason, because we are officially in year 34 right now, as we know that the anniversary date of the first ever show at the Off-Ramp is October 22nd, 1990, 34 years ago, almost to the day. And that's why we decided that this would be the perfect opportunity to do an episode that featured an anniversary show. Now, actually, if you look back at all of the shows that happened on this date, there's a lot. There are 8 shows that have happened on the anniversary, which we can talk about a little bit. But this one was the last one that have happened, and really there haven't been a lot of October shows in general after this run here in 2014, but we are going to talk about this monster Denver show with 38 songs, 3 hours and 20 minutes long. It is a barn burner. We'll have a lot to get to, including celebrating this band. So why don't we just jump right in? Randy Sobel over here, John Farrar over there.
Hello, hello.
So let's start off, because I got a little list here of the dates of all of the anniversary shows. That's including the Off-Ramp, obviously. So that's where it all starts, 34 years ago. And there are going to be some throwbacks in this show to the Off-Ramp, because they played 8 songs at that show. And 6 of those songs are going to be played at this show, including the opener, which is going to be released, which is the first ever song that they played live. So there's a great tie-in there. Milwaukee the next year, the 1-year anniversary in 1991, a very short show that was one of the opener shows for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Then you have to go 9 years later to Vegas. We know what happened in Vegas. That's the 10-year anniversary show, very special show. The following year is the Groundwork Benefit show. They don't really talk about the anniversary in a lot of these shows. Groundwork Benefit, they don't mention it. They don't mention it at Ben and Roy Hall at all. That happened on the date in 2003. That's a more significant show where you don't need to mention that, so I'm not surprised at all. They did it at Bridge School in 2006. I don't believe there was any mention to it then. And then the year before this, they did it in Philadelphia. There was a little mention, but it wasn't as celebratory as this show was. And I think a lot of the celebratory moments happened because this is the last, unofficially, the last night of the tour outside of the 2 Bridge School shows that they would play right after this.
Even this show, I think Ed says, like, oh, we weren't aware, we weren't thinking about it until someone pointed it out the other day. So they're just not a band at this point. They've softened a little bit in the last year or two, and you've seen them kind of talk about the early days and do a little bit more reminiscing and looking backwards than they had before. But yeah, at this point, they're just not that band that goes back and does that thing. They don't celebrate their history as much as a lot of other bands do. They're always looking forward.
Yeah, I'm halfway on that. I think that sometimes that they do because there's a lot of instances where you can say that they remember going back to like Philadelphia and saying, hey, we played this here, so we're going to play it again. We're going to bring up these shows. So it's not like they don't at all, but I don't think they're very good with dates. I think that's something that kind of does elude them. And I'll go back to the Breath situation that happened. Like, they could have brought that back. Some bands, if that's like a pivotal moment in their history and you're playing in the same venue, like, yeah, that's a good callback, but that's just not something that they did. I wonder if they just weren't thinking about it, weren't aware, didn't see my signs, whatever it was. But I guess I'm a little hard-pressed to believe that they didn't recognize that they didn't put the tour together and say, hey, last night of the tour, it's the anniversary. Like, nobody said that to them. I'm a little shocked about that. That feels, I don't know. I don't want to say purposeful that they would book like that, but it felt too good to be true to end the tour like that.
I don't think so. I mean, I think the 10-year thing was that, 10's a big, like, that's a nice round even number. 24 is, I just think it was kind of a happy accident. We'll see what happens for 35, but I don't think Ed cares, honestly.
I don't know if he doesn't care. I just don't think it's on his mind. Because if he didn't care, they wouldn't have brought it up. He wouldn't have gotten a little sappy when it came to the Wasted Reprise rant. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he doesn't care.
No, I mean, I just don't think they care about, like, playing shows on that day or, like, making a big deal out of it. That's all I mean.
Yeah, maybe. But I'm not fully on board with, like, they don't care about their history. I think they do. And I think it just shows up in little different pockets every now and again. And yeah, okay, so 24 years is not special, but if he really wore the Walter Payton jersey because it was their 34th year, that means they are thinking about it. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. So this show has a whopping 38 songs. Think about massive shows like this. You go back to Mansfield, you go back to The Spectrum, you go to State College, and this one is right up there. And while I think it gets its flowers and I think it gets its due, it's definitely not in the same stratosphere as the other three. Like, people talk about it, but I don't think they talk about it with the reverence of the others, because maybe you got used to sets being pretty long, because in 2014, I think average you were getting like 33 to 34. So it's only a couple more songs. And when you look at it, and yeah, okay, so this is a little bit nitpicky, but you got songs like Setting Forth, you have Eruption, you have Lukin, you have Wasted Reprise, only lasts like a minute and a half or whatever, even though there's a speech. But it is a little bit of a stat patter in a way. And I guess Lukin shouldn't count because Lukin has something extra on it. But this is more, feels like a 34 song set rather than a 38 in a sense. That's not a bad thing. I'm just making an observation.
It's a marathon, but it doesn't feel like it drags as some of them can, especially when we're 10 years removed from it. But this run of shows is always going to be overlooked by Moline and Milwaukee.
Yeah, unfortunately. And there's a ton of amazing shows that happen on this tour. Although I don't think Denver's necessarily overlooked. You're right. Those two shows are just going to be the ones that everybody gravitates towards. And even their sleeper shows. Detroit is considered a sleeper show. Cincinnati is a show I really, really enjoy. So, it's tough competition. But I don't think that takes away anything from what they did at this show. They're deep cuts. They really cranked out a ton of hits, especially at the end of the night. There are a lot of good fan service songs, and it's a good crowd, too. So they're very knowledgeable. They're prepared for the anniversary, as we'll get into, and it's a pretty solid go over here. This is the main set of Denver 2014. As I mentioned before, the opener for that off-ramp show happens to be the first ever song that they played, of course, and it became a staple of Pearl Jam sets for years and years and years in that opener spot. There was no other choice but to open the show with Release.
Come on. I see the world, feel the chill, which way to go, we'll still. I see the world on a rocket for time. I see the words in the
Ed introduces everybody, says good evening and welcome to the last night of the tour, waves his hands from side to side, and there's a sense that something magical might happen from this show. Ed's wearing a sports coat, which, for what it's worth, sometimes when he wears it, he's kind of like, okay, this is a special occasion. But it feels like the first performance on the night of the show that's following a legendary show, Milwaukee, of course. This band is going to go out on a bang. They know that they have to raise the stakes, and to do that with the songs that they spliced in, with the amount of songs that they spliced in, and to open with Release, I think they were on a mission at this show, and this opener is exactly what you want from what Release gives you from day one.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And then the callback to the off-ramp is perfect. But we have to talk about the screamer at this show, too, the YouTube video.
Oh, I was going to wait for that.
Someone is just screaming, and they have to lower the volume on the video when the person screams so it doesn't overwhelm you. It's unbelievable. But it ties in because you get Ed kind of yelping at the end of this, like just kind of letting out some primal screams there at the end. It's very good. But I found too this is interesting in the YouTube comments. I don't know, we take it for what it's worth, but he does change the lyric in the second verse to Dear John, which we've heard many times before. But there's a guy in the comments who says, I think Ed may have changed the lyrics in Release for me. My dad passed almost a year to the day prior. I was in tears the entire song. Ed even looked right in my direction as he was singing it, and he had made a request through the 10 Club for the song. So maybe this guy's name is John Strohmeyer. He commented on the YouTube video, so maybe he got a little dedication out of that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's interesting because you're right. John can mean many people, and That sounds like it could be legitimate. Obviously, we had Dr. John Evans. We have his Uncle John, who we'll dedicate to every now and again. And then even Johnny Ramone. I feel like when we did that Buenos Aires episode, I feel like Oh Dear John was Johnny Ramone for that. So we might have 4 John dedications on release. And who knows, maybe there's more that are out there. That's interesting. That's cool. I would love to get a little more information on that if this person is listening in, Mr. John. And to go back to that guy, look, fuck this dude. I didn't want to bring it up, and I don't feel like bringing it up the whole entire episode, but basically all he does the whole entire time is screaming, "Oh my God!" And it's
screaming for
so
Getaway
obnoxious.
half the time.
It's just little shit. If I would have wrote this down, I would have wrote a novel for every time that he wouldn't shut the fuck up. Like, who wants to be around that, guys? Like, I get it. I'm loud. I can sing loud, but I'm not going to act like I'm the only person in the arena. Nobody should. So if this person's listening in, shut the fuck up, man, and just enjoy the show. We don't need to hear you. We didn't pay to hear you. And this is only for the YouTube video and not the actual bootleg. So if you're watching, there's a full clip on YouTube. They should have just synced up the bootleg audio. Would have been
I was
a
going
lot
to recommend
cleaner.
that if you're going to go watch this, go do that. Yeah, sync up your bootleg with it.
Yeah, I never like doing that, but in some cases you kind of have to. So to follow release is going to be Low Light and Small Town. I was watching Mike during Low Light in this. He was just moving around all over the stage, and he would not stand still. Just couldn't help himself, just pacing and going up to the front of the stage to play with the solo and everything like that. Low Light is not one where you think that Mike gonna put on a show, but he was definitely fun to watch during that one.
Feeling the good vibes early on. I mean, knowing that they've got this marathon show to play and like knowing all the stuff they're going to do kind of gives them a little extra juice at the beginning, especially. And you can tell Ed's feeling it too. He holds that last note in Low Light for a long time.
Yeah, it won't be the last time that he holds out a note like that. So we're in for a good one. Obviously, the last night you want everything to be left on the stage. And Small Town will follow that and be the sing-along song that everybody's going to get into. Really kind of introduces your crowd to the band and each other, and they find out that they're going to get along just fine at this show. So now we get into the heavy stuff. Last Exit, Why Go? The band feels ready to go once they bust in the Last Exit, ready to pop champagne bottles here, as they would a lot later. And Last Exit to Why Go's transition shows that they're really not fucking around. It is seamless. I love when you have songs that start out with the drum beat and follow up on energetic stuff. Like Last Exit ends right on this like kind of hard out, and then to go right from that hard out into the drum beat seamlessly was just beautiful to hear. It's melodious to the ear. Why Go especially, I thought Why Go was an awesome highlight for the early on. It just felt like Mike was on top of his game. He was going behind the back very early. Ton of electricity that they're playing off of here. The two songs were excellent for a start.
Yeah, like where has this transition been for 20 years? Like they should be doing this all the time. That was great. Afterwards, Ed's going to say, pace ourselves. This will be a long night. But Last Exit, they didn't follow their own advice. I mean, Last Exit starts off super fast. Matt goes into it, breakneck speed almost. And that kicks into Why Go as well. You mentioned Mike, but like you see Jeff and Mike just bouncing along to the rhythm of the song. It's great.
Ed says, cheers, it's going to be a good night. We're going to pace ourselves, as you mentioned, because we're 5,280 feet up. He mentions how high the people are, And because marijuana is legal in Denver, they may be higher than that. Seattle and Denver are sister cities due to being on the right side of history with that. And obviously, as 10 years later, a lot of other states have followed up. I'm currently in South Carolina right now, where it is still a felony to, so that's disappointing. But that'll get you into your first two Lightning Bolt era songs, Lightning Bolt and Mind Your Manners. Towards the Great Mountains, he changes that line in Lightning Bolt, and there's yet again a ton of energy on Lightning Bolt. Mind Your Manners 2, I thought, was a very furious, intense version, and both songs are usually going to be back-to-back during this era, and you can really do no wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, Ed's doing the Better Man windmilling in Lightning Bolt already. That gets a good response from the crowd. This is a great version of Lightning Bolt, and then he's doing all the hand motions in Mind Your Manners, like the air traffic controller hand motions, like up and down and side and all that, which gives it a fun little extra visual.
We're pacing ourselves is the perfect way to put this, because after Why Go, we're going to stop. After Mind Your Manners, we're going to stop. Then we're going to have a bunch in a row following up on this little speech. So Ed says, it's funny that sometimes people that you've never met all of a sudden become friends. Someone like Pete Townsend or Roger Daltrey or Tom Petty, who we were here with last time, Ian MacKaye. Music was a lifeline, and it's where your education came from, and he figured out how to deal with issues. Nothing else better than dealing with issues than turning it up as loud as it would go. Pretending you're not some fucking punk kid not going to amount to anything. Then there's something called Into the Wild. Working with that, I felt Chris McCandless became a good friend of mine. We still hang out together a lot. And I hang out with his sister Corrine, and a couple of his sisters are here tonight. So the combination here is setting forth Leatherman, my father's son. That should be very interesting. And then Even Flow. The combo of setting forth into Leatherman is a little bit of a head scratcher, but it's a night full of rarities. So instead of doing the Not For You combination, which is a little bit more common, it's a bit of a misdirection for all the collectors. It comes and goes pretty quick, but my father's son, as mentioned. So he tease it up by saying it's for all the great fathers out there for not becoming one of the bad ones. This is obviously a song we don't talk about a whole lot. It's not one that I have a lot to say. However, I don't necessarily dislike this song. I've always kind of enjoyed that this was I don't know if it's a throwback to, like, let's get an angsty song in on a late era record, but I feel like this kind of gets overlooked because it doesn't fit in with Lightning Bolt. But if this is on, I don't know, like Versus or Vitalogy, or if it's a B-side from that era, maybe it's a little bit more revered, you know?
Yeah, I don't love Ed's delivery on it. It's a little bit off kilter to me. Like, it's a little bit awkward, I think. And like, they've only done the song 13 times. They only did it twice after the show. And I don't know if it will ever come back. I don't know if there's a big clamoring for them to play My Father's Son again. But it's interesting musically. It's not a song that I dislike. This is kind of a fun version. You watch Stone just headbanging the shit out of it. It looks like they're into it. But there's just something about it that just kind of feels off-center a little bit.
Yeah, it's tough to explain what that is. Like, you're right, his delivery, I mean, he comes off as like a little volatile. And I guess my thought about it being better on Versus is that why are you writing a song 23 years after you've been established as a band about, man, I hate my father? Like, that feels so kind of past them.
It's more like how you're realizing you're trying not to become your dad. Maybe it's a little bit of that kid from Versus grown up a little bit.
I suppose. It is a Jeff song, so Jeff songs have a little bit of kind of off-kilter to them.
That's true.
However, you know who the highlight was in this? The highlight was Boom. Believe it or not. He has like these little kind of in between like the chorus and verse where you would not expect an organ to go in there, and it fits in, and you're like, hey, damn, okay. I don't know what Boom was supposed to be doing there, but he made something work, and it was awesome. So in between that and Even Flow, Ed's doing the Freddie Mercury, yeah, little call and response bit. And then Stone is doing a little blues riff where Ed's reciting, I got the Bellevue Blues, I got too much money. I'm sure that was some kind of inside joke within the band because you see Jeff laugh a little bit. But that's going to get you into Even Flow. McCready is scorching on the solo, which in turn has Ed giving him his flowers mid-song instead of afterwards.
Yeah, just super dynamic and one of those things where he's in full Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan mode.
So apparently during the song, Ed was filming it, I guess, on a phone, on a video camera, probably like a Super 8 or something like that, knowing Ed's, technological advances and what he uses, still using typewriters and stuff. He says he was filming it for his brothers who couldn't be there. Matt's brother, Pete, is there. That's the first time I've ever heard of a brother named Pete from Cameron, but you don't necessarily always hear about their siblings. So Ed tells Pete that his brother is one of the greatest humans they know and one of the greatest humans to ever sit behind the drum kit. There was a top 100 drummers list that came out that Matt Cameron wasn't featured on. Can you believe that? I mean, it's disrespectful.
He's not showy and he's not flashy like Neil Peart or something from Rush. He's not going to get those accolades, but he just does everything well.
The accolade should be he was the top drummer for both Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. That should be well enough of an accolade to put you on a list of, hey, we need to pick 100 drummers. And there were other drummers that weren't on that list too, like Jimmy Chamberlain, that probably deserved a spot. So it's not
a lot of
like
those things tend to be 70s classic rock focused.
Yeah, I think this one was a bunch of drummers pick their favorite drummer. So, maybe they just weren't 90s guys. Who knows? But anyway, so Ed says this one is written by another great human, being the one playing the bass guitar. We're getting into Ghost. We do have a couple of Jeff songs here within the set, so Jeff is getting some love. It's Ghost, it's Present Tense, it's Do the Evolution. Ed kind of jumped the gun on Ghost a couple of times. You could tell that wasn't quite rehearsed, or he was just trying to do a little too much on it, but it was not waiting for that classic Rhodosphere solo that happens that you were able to hear a little bit, but it was only the tail end because Ed was going back into the soap makes you taller line or whatever it was. And I guess if you're not going to play it, then you're going to forget the lyrical structure, right? So it is what it is. Ghost has only been played 21 times, and they play it 3 more after this, so not one that's particularly on their mind, even though they had played it earlier that year at Leeds, so whatever, give them a pass, that's fine. Present Tense and Do the Evolution are both very, very good. Present Tense, just foot on the gas and fired up. The crowd was red hot for it. I think you needed that Ghost in between Even Flow and Present Tense. I think you needed to put a charge back into it and give the crowd something to react to again and build that back up. And everybody's kind of loose. I think Mike is really loose during the bridge. Jeff is bouncing around a whole lot, getting really into it, and I think that's kind of all you can ask for from an anniversary show, is that everybody is in the moment and feeling the moment. They know that they only have 2 acoustic shows left, and they're not going to play a whole lot in 2015, not for at least a full calendar year, so they have work to do, and it seems like they're more than up for the task.
Yeah, you can tell there's a really good energy on stage between the whole band, and that usually leads to some really good performances. But Yeah, I thought Jeff was outstanding on present tense. He doesn't play for a long time, like he has to wait a long time to come in and doesn't get to do the outro usually, but I love what Jeff is doing in present tense. Really, really good.
During Evolution, Mike hops over one of the floor speakers in order to jam with Stone, and there's just a lot of firepower on Evolution as well. Stone's very funky in a solo, Ed's shredding his voice, and it's just overall a very loud and heavy performance for that. Afterwards, Ed says the next song is about Mike McCready and his early friendship with a guy before he met him. Sometimes that kind of friendship leads to something like this, which happens to be the Eruption solo. And then, what would you think on a normal basis that Eruption solo would get you into? Like, probably a pretty anthemic, upbeat, well-known rocker, right?
Yeah, like a Better Man or a Jeremy or something, sure.
It's Of the Earth, one of the deepest of deep cuts that's being played for only the 8th time, following up on this massive 70s, 80s rock guitar god anthem. And I'm looking at this right now, songs that got played after Eruption. There are only 3 that have been played more than once. One of them is pretty obvious because the other one's another Van Halen song. Ain't talking about love. Can you name the other 2?
Ooh. Even
They are
Flow?
ones that you would expect. Yes, Even Flow is one of them. The other one might be a little tougher, but makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know.
Spin a Black Circle.
Okay.
And
I
then
can see that.
we have Bugs in there. Garden,
Of course.
React, Respond. Ledbetter? When was that? I don't remember that. Can't Deny Me. Sad. You Are. Like, there's some weird shit in there. Satan's Bed.
They did it more, I think, in 2022 during like the vocal issues. They were throwing it in more, so there's probably a few random ones in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm sure. So Of the Earth is going to follow this big, massive Eruption solo. Given a Fly is going to follow that. Of the Earth is another one that we don't talk about too often. Weirdly, I would not expect that the last time it was played before the show was 2012 at Pensacola, a show that's not known for having that great of a crowd. I'm shocked it was played at that show, but I mean, I guess we'll figure out why whenever we decide to do that episode.
If it had been on Lightning Bolt or Gigaton or Dark Matter, it would have instantly been the best song on any of those records.
It's a great song, but I don't know what the studio recording would sound like, so I'm going to reserve thought on that because I just don't know. I love the song a lot.
Yeah, all 13 versions are unique and different in their own way. This one's a little darker. It gets a little moodier in the middle, but it's still awesome. And then the quiet ending part is just fantastic.
Yeah, I noticed both things that you just mentioned there. I think it might feel a little different than the other jams because it somewhat keeps within the realm of the song, like within sort of the idea and the melody, and this one completely goes off that track. And you're right, it does feel darker, it feels a little bit more tense, and then the ending kind of in the same way that you're sort of following that up. You're getting like a massive chorus. I don't think we talk enough about how amazing this chorus run is, about how Ed uses everything within his vocal power to scream those lyrics, and how powerful the guitar chords on it and everything like that. Like, this is just an all-out powerful song. And one of the things I absolutely love about it is the way that they transition back from the jam into the original riff. I know I've mentioned this when we've talked about other versions. It gives you that sense of, like, yes, we're back at the start, like that comfort of going back into that, the main riff, the main hook in that. And I love when songs do that, when it kind of almost a little bit catches you off guard, and it's meant to catch you off guard. It was fantastic, and I think this version definitely stands out from this show for sure. There's a good crowd shot in Given a Fly of everybody bouncing up and down. And I think that maybe they were all looking to unload after a song that they were not as familiar with, because the crowd doesn't respond to this. I think there are a lot of people. I don't know if Oh My God guy really said anything, but I think he was more vocal on Given a Fly. That was the one portion where I mentioned in my notes to bring it up, because all I said was the dude on the YouTube video needs to shut the fuck up. That's all I said. But I think he was more, I'm going to yell on Given a Fly than I'm going to yell on Of the Earth. But that's why you need to play Of the Earth more, so more people can go back to the bootlegs and be like, yes, okay, we need this again. Now I'm going to know the lyrics. I'm going to know the chorus and sing along with it. But yeah, Given a Fly sounded excellent on that too. I think that's a good combo right there. I think that's a pick-me-up.
Well, yeah, I mean, how about the little two-part story you've got here? You're Of the Earth and then you're Given to Fly. That's like a little mini opera on its own there. Those two songs really fit well together, like a little story.
It says, I just want to make sure I'm a good host. So here's to all the people in the back on that last one. All the people in the back would get a little gift later on in the show that we'll talk about. But Sirens is going to go out to Todd, Kelly, and their little one named Dallas. There's something really weird and interesting that he says in Sirens at the end. He thanks the crowd because they do the whole reprise thing, that whole bit. And then he says something like, it's the last time we'll be hearing it for a while. And I'm not sure what to make of that. Is it just the fact that this is the last show? Or is it like, yeah, after this tour, we're kind of done with the song, which wasn't necessarily the case. They did play it a bunch in 16 and 18. Kind of tough to tell what he was trying to go for with that. Maybe it was just the fact that, hey, we're not going to hear this call and response for a while because it's the last night. Maybe that's just what he was going for there.
Right. Yeah, I thought that same thing, like trying to dig into like a deeper meaning on it. But I mean, they did it at the Bridge School 4 days later. So, I mean, I think it's just like, hey, it's the last night of tour. It's the last time we're going to be in front of a big crowd for a while. I think that's all he means.
Yeah, 2014 was really the year where every single night you were getting that reprise tune. It was getting better and better and better. And I think that's one of those things where
this one's great.
At some point in 2013, we covered the show, which we figured out it was the first time where they did it because it felt very improv. And I can't remember what show it was. I feel like it might have been Charlottesville or Baltimore or somewhere in that realm. And then once they started doing it more and more in 2014, it became a thing and people kind of caught on to it. The people that were there for all of the shows in front and everything like that, they all caught on. It became a staple of this tour, and it became a thing that I think they really saw to the crowd and said, you know what, you guys are killing it tonight. And kind of a powerful song as it is becoming more powerful. I think that there's something to be said in that, and we haven't heard this song since 2018, which is nuts. But the reprise is one of those things that if you go back to those versions of Sirens, this is the thing that stands out to me the most.
Yeah, I mean, it really kind of became a moment, and I kind of like it more than I did when it first came out. And, you know, when it comes out, you remember thinking, like, oh, this is kind of saccharine, like it's a little over the top. It's not going to be something that's going to be my favorite. But as it's gone on, I mean, I guess absence makes the heart grow fonder. They haven't played it in over 6 years, but I wouldn't mind hearing it again.
So now we're going to get Stone to do some lead vocals here. This has been a topic of conversation on this podcast for the last month or so, going back to one of the 2005 performances of Don't Gimme No Lip, and we did Mankind last week, and we did Grammy. So this has kind of been a theme, and I think this can officially come full circle with this version of Don't Gimme No Lip. As Ed's giving the mic over to Stone, Stone actually gives a shout out back to Ed, who he says never gets one. So that was a nice way to involve Ed, because Ed's never gonna say here I am or anything like that. He's always gonna give a nod to everybody else, and really Stone's the one that probably gets the least of those. But it was a nice moment that he acknowledged him in that facet. So we officially come full circle. Stone indeed has his guitar in hand, is not awkward. He is not playing frontman on this. He's not walking around and trying to do hand motions. So we can finally, hopefully, I'm going to guess that we don't get Don't Gimme No Lip for another year or so. We can hopefully rejoice on that and move forward with this storyline. So it's a fun version again. It's like a 2-minute song. Edge chinking the tambourine. And with Stone doing the job himself, there's no worry about reminders having to get to the bridge. So he's on it. Obviously, the band has figured it out after 11 years of playing it. So fun performance. No complaints.
Yeah, no, that was great. Another one that's only been done twice since this show. Getting My Father's Son only 13 times, Of the Earth only 13 times, Don't Gimme No Lips only at 14. Yeah, there's a lot of these little rare ones sprinkled in here. Yeah, Don't Gimme No Lip is always fun. Mankind is, I think, because it was on the record, of course, people think of that one more, but Don't Gimme No Lip is just as fun to hear Stone sing like that.
Still waiting for the day we get Sunburn. That's the one. It's never going to happen.
The sign's ready. The sign's ready for Australia.
Right. I think there are about 100 people or so listening to this that are saying, what the fuck are you talking about? And I always love on Twitter where these like random 90s music kind of engagement farming accounts always say, what's your favorite Pearl Jam song? And it's like Daughter or Better Man. And I say Sunburn. And I'm hoping I would get like one person to respond. One time, actually, I'm not going to mention who it was, but somebody responded like, why would you say that? And then what happened, I said, well, it gets other people to be like, what the hell is that? Go look it up. And I'm like, whoa, okay, I never heard that before. And then 5 people came back and they're like, wow, I'd never heard that before. Thanks for putting it to my attention. So if you don't know what Sunburn is, then you're going to go and listen to it right now. It's a beautiful song, and I love it.
It's a no-code outtake.
Yeah, it was featured in the Seattle documentary that I put together, and it's a really sweet moment that I kind of connected. That's one of my favorite parts of putting that documentary together, was using that song. So go listen to it. All right. So Lukin Porch. Lukin here. It's not like the MSG version of Lukin, but you are finding another way to skin a cat. like he's kind of improvising some of those lyrics to be somewhat recognizable, like using some of the same lines, but changing the sentence here and there, kind of retooling it a little bit. I don't know if anybody's thrown off by that at all. I don't think I was at all. I think once you hear the walk down the street to get to my own home, I think you get it. But this has actually been done a couple of times. I think Fort Worth was the latest that they had done this kind of version of this. I can't remember if they did it this year. I don't believe they did. There was another version. It might have been like Budapest or Krakow or something that was in 2022 where they did it. Copenhagen, one of those. They did it then too. So it's very, very rare that you get this version of Lukin with the slow intro that breaks right into the song after about a minute or two. And this is a cool little throw in for a crowd that knows it's a smart crowd. They're going to get a lot of gems at this show, and this might be like the coup de grace of the gems.
Yeah, this one is very cool. I mean, when you think of slow Lukin, you think of Ed doing it by himself or with a string quartet or something, but the whole band kind of adding some atmosphere to it. Like we talked about Of the Earth being a little bit darker, a little bit moodier. This one's got a little bit of ambience to it. They're building up like a whole underbelly to it that's kind of like seething in this thing. It's very cool. You know, if you're not looking at the set list when this comes up, you'd be like, oh man, is this like an Immortality intro or something? Like, what's going on? But when he kicks in and lets it loose, it's really cool. This is something that's just a little treat whenever you get it. You never know when it's going to pop up. It's one of those things that always just kind of elevates the show.
Right. It's not Lukin 2. I'm not sure what to call it, but the rare occasions and the lucky people that have been able to see it, it's always going to be a highlight coming out of it. And they get real furious on the back end, and obviously getting into the actual song itself, it's pretty fantastic. Transitioning to Porch to close out your 21 song main set. And Porch has some talking points here. So very heavy jam, lots of orb swinging, swatting, and attacking. Mike at first goes at it with his mic stand, but that doesn't shatter. The one that does shatter is the one that he stabs with the neck of his guitar, and it just shatters into a million pieces. And look, I don't remember, and I don't think that they used those orbs after this tour. So this is like the last time. Didn't happen in 16. They used a different structure. It was like, I feel like the structure they used was like a bird nest looking thing.
Yeah, they had that huge metallic nest looking thing up at the top.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is literally the last night to use the orbs.
Yeah, fuck it up.
Yeah, right. Just destroy shit. I think my favorite part is that Jeff takes the bottom of the orb and puts it on his head, and Mike breaks out the Polaroid and takes a picture of it. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, the ultimate in Porch shenanigans in the 2000s era. Like, still a great version musically too, like just driving and Cameron sounds awesome. We haven't mentioned Matt in a while. Ed goes out at the end like he was doing around this time and does the last part out in the crowd, which, like everybody, you need to get that rush and you get that reaction from the crowd. 2014 is a great year for Porch.
Yeah, when Ed was going up to the rail, I was kind of thinking, we didn't have this moment from Porch at all because the stage setup was so different this year. And really, we didn't get it for the last couple because of COVID concerns. Do you think that was missed?
Yeah, I think so. It's a moment. Now, of course, everybody breaks out their phone and starts recording him. But yeah, I remember when he came out in 2013, I was right up front. And like, he's right there and you're pretty much face to face with this dude. It's just a really cool moment that I think it would be cool to get again. But who knows?
All right, we're at the encore break. So let's pause for station identification and talk about some things right now. Let's get into Patreon. We have one new patron for this week. You may recognize her name because she's been on a Pearl Jam stage before. Let's thank Abby Hobbs for joining up on our Patreon under the bonus leg tier. Abby, obviously, this past year at Wrigley, got the opportunity to sing Won't Tell on stage. It was an amazing moment. I have promised her that she can come on an episode and talk about it. And I have not fulfilled that promise because I'm sure you guys are going to want to hear from her and her story and how it all kind of came to be. So I owe her that. And if she's listening in, Abby, I owe you that, but I also thank you for joining in and being part of our Patreon community. Very cool. Glad to have you aboard, of course. And also to recognize, because I didn't mention him earlier, Joseph Smith requested this episode, so I just want to give a shout out to Joseph. He didn't have a story for it. He was just amazed by how many songs were played and the energy in the room, so we just give a big shout out to him. And just like Joseph and a lot of other people that have requested episodes, Sheehan from last week, who told an amazing story and did such a great job with that, the way that you can get your favorite show covered by us in an episode like this is joining up on the Giggle Egg or the Horizon Leg tiers for $5, $10 a month. And that will get you and your story told on this podcast. We've been able to do some shows, and this one isn't a show that's not on our radar at all, because how could it not be? It's 38 songs long. It's definitely one that we're thinking about. However, there are always shows that people bring up that they want us to cover that are personal to them, that aren't the stadium shows, that aren't the State College and the Molines and the ones that everybody wants to hear. It's shows from like local areas, like if somebody's from up in Canada and they're like, hey, you haven't done like a Montreal show or something like that. Those shows that we might not be thinking about, those are going to be the shows that people request and people are going to want to hear. And if you're into the podcast and you are thinking about like, hey, I would love, because maybe you've only been to a couple shows, maybe you haven't traveled outside of your local area, and that's okay, because not everybody's going to do that, but you want to intake Pearl Jam as much as you can. And I know a lot of people that listen to the show constantly, they don't have a whole lot of shows and they live vicarious through this. And that's amazing that they do. But if you've only been to a couple of shows and we haven't told your story, then what are you waiting for? What are we waiting for? We want to be able to share these episodes, and we're going to get to every single one at some point in this lifetime. So we're going to find a way to get to it, but you're able to, with a donation of $5, $10 a month, you are able to help us get there sooner. So why not just join up on either of those tiers, the Giggle Leg or Horizon Leg. Horizon Leg will also get you a profile episode in the future, which should be a lot of fun. We just want to be able to cover your favorite shows, the ones that we're not thinking about. You know, maybe some of those mid-2000s ones from 2006 that we haven't talked about, something like that. So if you have one, if you want to contribute to the show, if you want to be part of an episode, then that's the best way to do it. Patreon.com/live on four legs, or the Patreon app you can download and search for Live on Four Legs, or you can go to liveonfourlegs.com and go to the top. There's a become a patron button. You click it, you sign up, and that is done. Or if you're already a patron and you haven't caught up on that perk yet, then feel free. Up your donation, raise it, and we will get you that episode. We have a lot of bonus like tier people, and I'm sure they're looking for one day, hoping to get an episode dedicated to them, and we are hoping that we can get to as many people as humanly possible within the 300 plus that we have that have been so kind to donate and help us out. And speaking of helping out, we are still taking donations for all the charities that are helping out over in Asheville as well as Tampa. And I'll just leave it right here. I just kind of make it simple for this week. If you go to Patreon and if you sign up, we will triple the donation for all the new signups. So Abby donated $1 a month. We will donate $3. That seems cheap. We'll donate 10. If you're going to donate $1, we'll donate $10. We'll give it something substantial. So any more donations that come in through Patreon, we will raise it. We will triple it. If somebody comes in right now and wants to join that Giggle Egg tier and they donate $5, you know, we'll donate 20. I know that's more than tripling, but we'll donate 20. Why the hell not? So let's donate some money for these great causes that are helping out during the hurricane devastations, because it's about helping out the communities, and a lot of Pearl Jam fans have been affected by this. So let's do something good for them. Now back to The Rock. So the fans are all very savvy to this. I go back to the 10th anniversary, where when they came back out on stage, they all had balloons blown up and they were all swatting balloons at them. And that was a fun moment while they were playing Do the Evolution. And at this, they all have like birthday party noisemakers in the front row and kazoos, and they're all blowing their horns and everything. It gave me some PTSD from that World Cup with all the vuvuzelas. I always wanted a vuvuzela because I wanted to be able to break one across my knee. That's probably why I hate soccer, is because of that damn thing. Because I really wanted to get into the World Cup that year, and I couldn't, because I couldn't listen to it. It says, you knew we were going to come back. We have more lights to break. Is it an optical illusion, or is the Canadian flag bigger than the American flag? It was a little bit. That was interesting. I don't like that. I think everything needs to be symmetrical, but take that up with the Pepsi Center. And then Ed acknowledges these noisemakers and says it's like New Year's Eve, but it ain't midnight yet. The people that really like to celebrate, we've been fortunate enough as a group to have many, many, many close friends in the armed forces. There are some positive stories and a few hard ones too. One observation to make. When we first got together many, many years ago, there have been a few conflicts in the last 20 years. There's one we can agree upon, and if we can agree upon it, then we have to do whatever we can to right the injustice. It sometimes feels like these people that sacrifice themselves to put themselves in harm's way, the intense work, the commitment that is made to feel safe at home, and other countries when their safety is threatened. As a reminder, it's not just the person, but it's the whole family and everybody's commitment. We don't fully grasp this, but some folks are here tonight, and we should give them the loudest applause in the whole room. This is dedicated to one of the most inspiring couples I know. I think he said Jonathan and Ruth. Future Days is going to be the first of the encore. There's going to be a lot of songs in this encore one. We are going to bunch a couple of them together, but Future Days is kind of on its own here. I will say that this was very much like a Western guitar vibe that Stone was pulling through on this. I thought that was interesting, a little bit more twang to the song than he usually has. Mike is playing a 12-string on this. And I will say that this is not one of my favorite songs, but when they did this at Ohana, really nice change of pace, breaking this out outside of Just Breathe. And of course, this song has kind of grown at this point with The Last of Us and the inclusion with that video game and that show. It means something a little bit more now than it did back then, but it still means a whole lot.
Yeah, I thought this was great. I mean, you get the whole band on. I mean, I think a lot of times they were just doing versions with just Ed and Boom, but when you get the whole band, again, kind of, like I said, Mike adding a lot on that, on the 12 string, like adding some ambiance and some little notes underneath is very cool. And then, of course, gotta mention Boom again. I thought Boom sounded great on this.
That's another thing that you can tie in Just Breathe and Future Days, because yes, he did that solo at Ohana. We don't have a bass line anywhere close, but still, does it need to be? Probably not. Ed mentioned Simon, as we all know, that's his guitar tech, and he says he's a part-time bartender. So as mentioned before, all the guys in the back would get a little gift. So Ed points out all the different places that should be sent wine bottles around the arena, and he calls this one about the everyday warrior. I'm going to slam all these songs in a section right here. Sleight of Hand, Imagine, Mother, Last Kiss. The Sleight of Hand is, again, going back to some more rare stuff, and the other ones are going to be all kind of cover fest here and kind of stick within the realm of slow burning up until the point where there's going to be 3 songs that end this encore one that are going to be fantastic, but it's a very long slow burn. Sleight of Hand, I feel like with the entire band sitting down, that maybe you take a little bit away from the song. I would love to hear them go back to versions where Mike absolutely shreds at the end. I think that those are few and far between, but really stand out when you get versions like that, when he just goes off. And when he's sitting in the chair, when you're following this up with an acoustic song of Imagine, like, you're not going to shred like that, but I wish they would go back to that kind of rendition a little bit more. I feel like the audience would catch on to that a little bit more if they would go back to that.
I know they would never do this, but it would be such a good opener, I think, too. Like, it has such a good build at it, and by the end, you're just, like, ready to run through a wall when Mike lets loose on that thing. But yeah, I agree.
I don't know about opener, but I like the idea of number 2 or number 3. I like that being a kick down the chairs kind of thing for sure. So the band is going to leave the stage. Ed is going to do Imagine solo, but you do see Ed kind of whisper something into Jeff's ear, and I believe that something is going to be, when you guys come back, we're going to go into Mother instead of Last Kiss, because Last Kiss was originally on the set list after Imagine, and I think that he made a change on the fly and added Mother to beef up this set list even more, I suppose. So, yeah, not my favorite bit here. Ed, before Imagine, is saying, look, unless there's a new app on your phone that can light your barrel of cigarettes, pull out a light if you got one. And apparently, I guess somebody threw up a joint on stage and he said, oh, I already have one, but I wasn't even talking about that. And then there were more jokes about it being legal in Colorado. And yeah, this is not for me. I have mentioned Imagine 1,000 times and how that is not my jam. Mother is fine for what it is, but doesn't do a whole lot for me in the landscape of things. And Last Kiss is just not. Yeah, I mean, I got a little bit on the performance, but this is pretty basic. And I think if what followed was also pretty basic, I'd be a little bit soured on it. But since we do get a great follow-up to end this encore, I guess I don't mind that they went in this direction.
Yeah, Imagine is such a weird choice for them because we always talk about how they don't go for the obvious choice when they do covers. They'll do like a deeper cut or something off the beaten path. But Imagine is this whole thing. It has this whole meaning behind it, and like it just doesn't do anything for me. And like Mother, yeah, the government line always gets a reaction, but yeah, pass. Last Kiss is fun though. They play it to the back in a set of 3 covers. I wouldn't think that Last Kiss would be my favorite of the 3, but here it is.
Yeah, I think my favorite part about Last Kiss is that because they're playing to the back, Matt has that extra drum set that he's playing back there. So right at the tail end, when everybody's doing the oh, Ed jumps on the normal kit and starts playing the end of the song with them. I thought that was cool. And you got to remember, I feel like, what band was it? It wasn't like Bad Radio or anything like that. Maybe it was, I think he was in a band called Indian Style. I know that Brad Wilk was in that band, so that doesn't make sense. Yeah. But Ed played drums for some band. I know he did.
Hovercraft.
Did he play in Hovercraft? Okay, because I wasn't sure. I thought that
Hovercraft.
I thought that Beth played drums in Hovercraft. I thought that
she was I think she played bass and sang maybe. But yeah, Ed was the drummer in Hovercraft.
Okay. All right. Let's get into good stuff here. Ed asked the crowd in the back if anybody got the wine bottle, and he says, spill some wine so we can see it. You guys all have school and work tomorrow, so we got one more song left. And then he mentions they have good work to do helping Neil out at the bridge school, so maybe they should just end it early. The crowd erupts, and they said, all right, let's play something loud. The last 3 of Encore 1 are going to be Breath, Leash, Rearview Mirror. You want to get the crowd favorites in, well, you pick 3 of the best. I loved Breath opening that up and being the follow-up to the section, because I feel like that was a little bit long to go through 5 songs that were, I don't want to say lacking energy, but 5 songs that were mid-tempo and kind of stayed within the mid-tempo. You want your encores to have like big time energetic feel. So when Breath comes in, it feels like the crowd is able to erupt. The crowd kind of goes off, and especially somebody in the crowd that can't help themselves. But I mean, everybody kind of singing the little bits in the beginning, and the solo was awesome in this. The crowd got really involved. Ed singing right on top of the speaker. That's something that he usually does. Going back to the first show, Breath was played at the first show, so you got to make a mention of that.
Yep, I was going to mention that. Definitely, like Release was. I think the nice little tie-in there. But yeah, I mean, this is the perfect spot for Breath in an Encore 1, coming after a cover or after like a sit-down section or to the back. Like, immediately, you've got the whole crowd in the palm of your hand again. How has Breath only been played less than 100 times? That's, again, just criminal. But, again, you mentioned the solo. I thought that was the highlight. I thought Mike really just let loose on that and put a little bit of extra behind it.
Breath is fantastic. River Mirror is fantastic. I thought Leash was a little bit sluggish, but overall the energy was absolutely there and the crowd had a blast with it. But I think the version was nothing to take away from the show to be like, wow, that's the one, that's the Leash. The energy is the takeaway from that one, but River Mirror too, it's full drive, it's full gas. Ed and Jeff are rocking out together on this, and it absolutely smokes. Complete barn burner. Ed teasing this crowd on the build-up, and the ending is just flat out a demolition derby. So Breath and Rearview Mirror and Leash are all just a fantastic way to close out. And a lot of these songs, the only songs that are going to be non-90 songs from here on out are wasted and the reprise wasted. So you get the throwbacks here.
Leash is cool. I mean, always, whenever you get Leash in the 2010s, you're lucky, but he goes with the fucking lines and then he like catches himself or forgets that he was supposed to do Lucky Face and then like goes back to Lucky Face at the end, which I thought was funny. But Rearview Mirror, we talked about how good of a version of Port this is. Rearview Mirror 2 just absolutely brings the house down.
So now we're at Encore 2, and there are going to be a lot of 10 era and early era songs that are going to happen here, including the first two at the top. Again, just like Breath, played at the first show. So I wonder if that's cognizant on their minds. I have no idea. Again, 6 of 8 of those songs were played. The only 2 that weren't were Alone, and of course, Just the Girl wasn't going to get played. I think they're somewhat cognizant of that, but the way that they're going to get into Once is great because they're going to actually acknowledge it at this point. So Ed acts surprised. Everybody's still there. We wanted to have a show that we would remember and maybe one of the best for the last couple of years, but we couldn't do it without you. Some of you probably know, and we didn't know until about yesterday. Today, October 22nd, 24 years ago, was our first gig. Noisemakers are just going off during this, and Ed is passing the bottle around to everyone, where Stone's taking a swig and everybody, and the crowd starts singing happy birthday. This says we're proud of that, and we're proud to be in a long relationship. We had to divorce a couple of drummers before we can settle down, but 24 years, there are two people on this stage that have been together for 30 years. Jeff and Stone, obviously. We're now Jeff and Stone 40 officially now. So I want to thank you. It's been the ride of our lives, and we rode the wave. And there's just a lot, like everybody's like, finally, thank you. They made mention of it. We can tie this in. This could be a story together. And I think going into Once after that speech made Once feel massive. I feel like the crowd really brought it on this version. It was just a ton of juice. Everybody was chanting back along with them, and the birthday acknowledgement just completely changed the course of what this encore was set to be, and it became the party from then on out.
The celebration is on. I mean, Once is the 30th song already, and you've gone through this whole nearly 3-hour set and all the ups and downs and all the different songs, and there's finally this acknowledgement of it. Everything after this just feels like icing on the cake, no pun intended. But I really like this performance of Once too. That's not usually a song that I think of as a highlight, but yeah, I think you're right. The crowd definitely elevated it, and you could feel there was some extra energy on the stage.
Black was played at that off-ramp show too. It was like one of the only times in 1991, very early on, that they would play it. It was very sporadic that they would bring it out, but it was kind of a day one song that they held on to and they recorded for the record, and then we all know the history with that. But I thought that the highlight here was just a huge sing-along, and Mike getting the platform, and also We Belong Together gets very, very good on Black as well.
Felt like they had the whole crowd hanging on every note. Mike did.
After that, you're going to get State of Love and Trust and Better Man. I think the energy just keeps coming, just keeps pouring out. The songs that they're playing here are kind of songs that make this band who they are. And State of Love and Trust is one of those songs where it kind of helped elevate them during the singles era, and people that were savvy enough to go out, find the soundtrack for that movie, and get a song that with this in breath that felt like they were getting non-album songs that kind of made them dive down a rabbit hole to find more, maybe some B-sides like Footsteps or Ledbetter or something like that. I think that's a super important song within the landscape of who they are, as well as Better Man. And we talked about how Better Man's evolution was last week and how that continued in 1998. Like, it was just elevating. It was on the rise. And obviously here, it's the massive moment, anthemic. Ed is handing this to the audience on a silver platter to sing along with, and they take everything and run with it. I mean, fun is the operative word for both of these versions. You mentioned him doing windmills on Lightning Bolt earlier. The windmills are back on Better Man, and the band is feeling the moment from both of these performances. This encore is massively packed for a reason.
Yeah, it's hard to sometimes be up to the moment for bands. I mean, you've seen so many bands have this moment and it doesn't feel like they capitalized on it, but Pearl Jam has these big songs, and Better Man especially. You look at this encore and What's Gonna Come, but like Better Man is just this huge song, and it can fit the moment, and like you're letting the crowd be a part of it, and yeah, they have these songs that can live up to this moment, and 33 songs into a show on your 24th anniversary. I mean, it's just perfect set list construction.
And the way that they're going to end this set, I think, adds on to that. So, right here, they're going to do the Wasted Reprise bed, and Ed is going to talk a little bit about and kind of give a little bit of an insight to what was going on in his head and how he knew that they had something on October 22nd. And let's listen to what Ed's story is here.
So I was thinking about today, so okay, if October 22nd we played our first show, October, not to be self-congratulatory, but October 23rd, it was a Sunday, I think, and we went in and we recorded the 8 songs we had, or whatever, maybe 9 songs. October 24th, I went back to work at the gas station in San Diego. And well, it's been in like a crazy dream, except I had the tape. I had the tape and working the midnight shift, and I could play the tape, and it really happened, you know. But and who knew what would happen? But I will tell you this: October 25th, I think, was the day that I gave my 30-day notice at the petroleum company. And what a, it's a good feeling to just be able to say, like, I'm out of here.
He had that inkling. He found something that was special. He found a band that he could connect with, songs that meant something. They recorded, and then October 25th, gave his 30-day notice and said, I'm out of here. And the rest is history. So it must be tough anytime that you're in a band to be like, wow, I'm going to drop everything because I feel like we can make it. Like, there's a less than 1% chance then that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think Pearl Jam, I don't want to use this as a bad thing. I don't want this to be misconstrued, but I think they had some help where they were established enough, where the members, they were about to blow up with Mother Love Bone, and obviously that wasn't the case, but they had the right people that had their back, and they had some good help in places that maybe other bands wouldn't have help in. They were set up really well, and it worked out. For a lot of other bands, if you're sitting here right now and you wrote a bunch of songs and you feel really good about them, especially in this era, like, it feels like you just can't get big anymore. Not in the way that Pearl Jam got big. Like, you can find your niche audiences and you can tour the country and maybe open up for some bigger bands, but for a rock band, you can't get big right away anymore. You have to put out a couple of records and you have to kind of earn it. And even so, you might be on indie labels or something like that for a long time. Mm-hmm. But I think that they were set up really well, and that's not a bad thing. I think they took that opportunity and knew that they couldn't waste it. That's not a pun. And they scored the touchdown and kept scoring them. So credit to them, credit to all the bands that can do that. It's just a really, really small percentage that happens to, that you can say it was a success story.
This reminded me too, man, I wish, if I had known that this was going to come up, I would have saved this and taken more notice of it. But just kind of doing the doom scrolling the other day, a picture popped up where a woman who was one of his co-workers at this gas station,
I saw that,
had posted a picture of them together, and he's got his arms crossed and he's kind of got his back to her, smiling at the camera with the long hair. Picture kind of popped up, and it made me think of this, like, there's this guy, he doesn't even know life's going to change in 30 days. That was an interesting picture too, like, you're kind of seeing him right before everything blows up, and he's just kind of this naive kid. Like, obviously he wasn't a kid, he was probably 23, 24 years old, but it's kind of this like the innocence on his face. It's just like, oh, 1990 to go back. It's just an incredible picture.
His shirt's tucked in. He was trying to be professional.
Yeah. Does it work? Yeah.
Right? Yeah, but he still like looked like himself. He didn't cut his hair to work at security or a gas station or wherever that picture was from. But we talked about it when we did the Buenos Aires episode, that they always mention, especially down in South America, that they all came from humble beginnings, and it's not an act. Like, that picture should be the example of here's where we came from, and we've had to work our way through this. So, all credit to them. I'm going to kind of end the set here a little bit and pick out some talking points, but it all works together. A live Baba Ledbetter. I mean, you're working your way towards the end of this 38-song monster. I think Life Wasted lit up the room, set the table for the ending, and then the band is able to kind of take a minute to celebrate themselves too, to be like, yeah, you know what? We did this. 24 years is not something that the average band can say that they've achieved, especially bands that have been through turmoil, which they went through a lot of turmoil very, very early on. And to have that, it felt like, especially during the live, when Ed goes on top of that platform to sing to the crowd, it felt really cathartic for everybody. It felt like the moment wasn't lost on them, that, you know, they can do this, and they appreciate every moment that they're able to fill up an arena and entertain these people. Because, man, there was a time where maybe back then it was just kind of a pipe dream back in 1990. Like, okay, we'll see where it goes. But Jeff had mentioned in tons of interviews that he never expected or really wanted it to blow up right away. He wanted it to kind of ease its way in, and then after a while, I think he would say the REM way of getting to fame, like find this little niche audience and then have it evolve over time. And they were in the right place at the right time where that couldn't happen. So I don't think anything of this is lost on them. And I like seeing them being able to celebrate themselves. And I think they might say, oh, we're just celebrating because we're really appreciative of the crowd and all that. But I think they are taking a moment to celebrate themselves.
And I think it's better because it was kind of a little more spontaneous, a little more off the cuff. Like Ed says, they didn't really plan it this way. It just kind of happened like a happy accident. But you can tell, like, yeah, during a live and Baba, everyone's got a smile on their face. Baba has the big ending. Ed's just waiting to smash that mic stand at the end. He's just looking at Matt like, come on, give it to me. And then the end, like, it's like a locker room, spraying champagne everywhere, like just a really cool atmosphere on stage. Not something they allow themselves all the time, but it felt earned here.
He also gives nod to The Who's 50th anniversary before Baba 2, which I guess happy 60th to The Who. Everything's in place with it being the final songs, not technically, but of the touring aspect of 2014, you know, swinging the microphone wire around and throwing out the tambos. Like, they're just taking it all in and enjoying the moment. The show is going to end by Ed saying, this is our way of saying goodbye. I guess it has to happen at some point. So this is goodbye. But no, it's like Hawaiian style. You don't say goodbye. You say ahoy hoy. That means see you next time. So shaka ahoy hoy. So that is how you get through a 38-song monster set. So now we pick 3 that we really like.
My number 3 is going to be Breath. My number 2 is Lukin. And my number 1 is Of the Earth.
Yeah, order is weird for this. Like, I don't have anything that I feel like is an obvious number 1 from this, or even an obvious number 3. But I'm just going to give 3 right now that I think are notable from this show. And I think that number 3 for me is going to be Once. Number 2 for me is going to be Lukin. And I'm going to actually give the nod to Release for number 1 here, because I love the tie-in with it being the first song from the first show, and then having them recognize that. And granted, maybe they didn't have to recognize that for that to happen, but still, the fact that it did, I think, is extremely important. So now, let's get into rating this show and see where it stands.
So we talked at the beginning about how this 2014 run, there's a lot of underrated stuff that gets overshadowed by the two-headed monster of Moline and Milwaukee. And I think this is one that not a lot of people go back to, but they should. It doesn't feel like a 3.5-hour show. It's a fun watch. It's a fun listen if you can tune out the Screamer guy. But I think this is right under Hall of Fame level. I'm in this a 9.5.
Yeah, so I think this is one of those shows, and I think you're right, but I'm going to extend on that a little bit. I think this is one of those shows where when you look at it on paper and you think, wow, 38 songs, that's pretty impressive, and it is. It's very impressive, 38 and 3 hours and 20 minutes, but I don't think it hits that same status as some of the other shows that did that. And I don't know if I can explain why, and maybe it's the facet that it doesn't have a lot of like all-time performances, and I think that you might need those from those kind of shows. You need like the band coming out and doing Whip It, or you need Bugs, or you need, even though I hate it, the Satan's Bed moment from State College. You need those things. And I think this show has Lukin. I think it has Of the Earth and Ghost and some of those other songs that it's known for. But I also think that it needed more for the casual bootleg person that didn't go to the show to latch onto. And there's stuff there. I think overall it's a very good show. I think the point that you make about it not feeling like 3 hours is pretty accurate. But I'm not at the 9.5 level. I'm going to go a 9 on this because I think it was just overall a very, very good show. Maybe it didn't need to be 38 songs, but I think everything kind of fit in its place. So the fact that we were anticipating doing this for a 2-part episode and it looks like we don't have to because we finished in good timing here. I was just kind of anticipating this being a long episode, and it didn't have to be because I think a lot of the performances kind of just spoke for themselves instead of us needing to get into an extended discussion like I kind of assumed that would happen. But anyway, that is that for this one. And for 2014 on the US tour, we don't have a whole lot left. I believe the number's either 2 or 3. We got one of the Austin City Limits show. I believe it was the first one. We have Tulsa, and that might be it. I mean, look, if you're requesting and you want either of those shows, they'll go on the list. But we might have to space that out a little bit in order to kind of keep this tour alive. We can talk about it again. So, but hey, I guess that's the mark of an important tour where a lot of stuff happens. And a lot of the shows that we did do, like Detroit and like Cincinnati, like those were requests. So we get to all of them. And that's the goal of the show. So next week, we are going to get into an era that we really don't talk about. And we kind of held these episodes for a specific time of year that is coming up. And that is election time. And that is the 2004 Vote for Change tour that they did a couple of swing state show tours. We have done a couple. We've done Reading, we've done Toledo, and as mentioned earlier, Asheville. When looking at this and giving this out to people to vote for, it was pretty obvious that after everything that happened that we were going to do Asheville. So if you want to, again, next week we're going to announce how much we were able to make from our donations, and we will put in our fair share too for all of the Asheville charities that we promised to raise for. So again, if you want to help donate to the charities that we're raising for during this time, we'll announce how much we make last week. Beloved Asheville, Asheville Survival, and the Pansy Collective is what we're raising money for. So please feel free donate over on Patreon or send Venmo to @liveon4legs, the number 4, and we will make a generous donation to these organizations. We'll announce how much that is for next week. All right. Until then, that's 2004. We don't talk about that a whole lot, and hopefully we'll talk a little bit about voting next week and how important voting for this election is, and voting in your local elections is as well. I think that this is a pretty smart fan base that understands that you need to vote, and we'll kind of get into maybe how the band has a little bit of an influence in that too, because from day one they always made it a point to be like, your voices need to be heard. So we'll talk about all that for next week, but we thank you for tuning into this one. And if you enjoyed this episode, then hopefully you guys are subscribed over on Apple, Spotify, wherever you subscribe to get your podcasts. And if you're subscribed anywhere, then there's a spot where you can give us 5 stars, a little bit of a rating. That helps us out and helps the next person see that, hey, people like this show. And that's all they need to know. If people like this show, then, hey, I might like this show too. And that's going to tell them you might want to listen. And also another thing that might tell them that they want to listen is that you leave a comment. You let people know what you think and what you're getting out of this show. We've got some really, really good ones lately, so please keep leaving them, keep letting people know what you think, and yeah, that train will keep running, and hopefully throughout the years and years and years, we'll get more and more people finding their favorite shows that we've talked about in the past, and who knows, maybe you're listening to one of them right now, like 3 years after the fact, after we recorded, because these are evergreen in ways. So anyway, let's say goodbye. This may be the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, miss you already, miss you always. We'll be back for Asheville next week. Until then, see ya on the pod.
Oh, yo.
That was the sound